everyone. Welcome to our live webinar. We are going to start just in about 30 seconds. Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on the 7 biggest mistakes made by small business owners when trying to grow. I'm Bob Hogan, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County, and I'm going to be your host today. Our presenter today is Belinda Wasser, and more on Belinda in just a minute, but first some brief information on SCORE. SCORE is a national organization with over 11,000 volunteers across the country. And locally here at SCORE Fairfield County, we have over 130 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. And we offer 3 primary value-added services to small business owners. We offer free one-on-one counseling. That can either be by face-to-face, telephone, or email. And you can access that by requesting the mentor link on our website, or you can actually use the link on the screen that you're going to see now. Second, we offer a whole range of educational workshops and webinars, about 150 during the year. And lastly, we have a wide range of extensive resources on our website, which also gives you access to a network of subject matter experts. Our next webinar will be 2 weeks from today on July 23rd. The time, though, will be different. It will start at 5:30 p.m. The topic is using social media to grow your business, best practices, and newest tools, with Kate Berg presenting. And you can find more specifics on that on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. Just a few logistics about today's event. We have set aside time for Q&A. Belinda's going to go through the 7 biggest mistakes, and we're going to take questions at the end of each one of those, and we'll also have time for questions at the end. If you have a question, please use the chat window in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You can type in questions at any time during the presentation, and we'd encourage you to do that as they come to mind. We will end our webinar sharply at 1 o'clock and respect your time. The session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org, within the next couple of days, and you'll be able to see the materials and the slides there as well. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Belinda Wasser is a business workflow and logistics expert with over 25 years of experience. Belinda is the founder of Rocket Girls Solutions and is hired by small businesses on a contract basis to act as their part-time business manager. She's worked with a range of high-profile companies, including Digitas, EDS, and the Center for Quality of Management. I'll now turn it over to Belinda. Belinda, all yours.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I want to start and give you a little bit of my background and let you know who's talking. So I was in corporate America for about 17 years, and my titles were generally things like business manager, office manager, director of operations. At one point, I was in the IT department of an agency in Boston, but for the most part, I was always working on how to make something faster, better, or more efficient. That's just how my brain works. And I was fortunate to have some really great mentors and managers along the way of my corporate career, and I learned a ton. In 2001, I decided to go off on my own. My daughter was born, and I wanted to be more available to her. And I started my own business, and it was called Blueberry Babies. And I ran what it was an online store, and I sold baby gifts. And what I learned instantly, and I was very surprised by this, is that all of the skills that I had acquired in corporate America did not translate into owning my own small business at all. So I had to learn how to set up credit card processing. I had to learn about cash flow, unfortunately the hard way. I had to learn how to grow an email list that eventually was 17,000 contacts. And I had to learn how to do a newsletter and stay in touch with my customers before Constant Contact was invented. So it was a big challenge, but it was something that I really enjoyed. So the next steps. What happened was as I would try to set all these different things up, I would have to figure out how things connected. If you consider was the dark ages of the internet. So Shopify didn't exist. There was no Indicia, no simple way to connect the pieces of my business that I needed to connect. So over time, people started asking me, how did you do that? How did you get QuickBooks to talk to the shopping cart? How did you make these connections? And what I would always say is, if you come to my neighborhood and meet me for a drink, buy me a martini, I'll sit down and I'll explain it to you and I'll try to save you time. And I really enjoyed doing that quite a bit. And one day, one of the people that I was sitting with said, will you take this project on? Would you help me start my business? And at that time, I had been doing Blueberry Babies for about 8 years. 2008 had hit, and it was a difficult time. And my business really had turned into a distribution center because it was all operating very smoothly, and I was ready for a change. So I started working with this small business owner, and that was my first what would become Rocket Girl client. Now I've been doing it for 9 years full time. It's all virtual. My clients are all over the country, and I'm working currently with 50 small business owners and solo professionals. And what I do with them is I help them with all the back end pieces of their business that either they don't enjoy or they don't know how to do. So I help them set up credit card processing. I run webinars just like this one for them. I help them with their PowerPoint presentations, anything, their websites, newsletters, anything in the back end. And I love it. It's been a lot of fun. And the result has been, over the 9 years, that I've probably seen the back end, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, of over 150 businesses. So what I want to do today is walk you through the common things that I see, the mistakes that small business owners make, with the hope that I can help you skip those. So the first thing I want to talk about are the cues that tell people that you're in business for real. The first place I want to start is a very simple, basic place, but it's really important. It's your email signature, the way that you send emails. So the first thing I want to point out is that it's very important to have your first name, your last name, and your business name in your email signature. The other day, I got an email. I was working with a restaurant, and I was trying to set up the date and the contract and everything, and they were emailing me. The name was CLEPIERRE, all in lowercase. There was no reference to the restaurant, and I thought it was spam. So you want to make sure that if you take the time to send someone an email, that they know that it's from you. The second thing is, many small business owners own their own domain. So what I mean by that is, so my company is called Rocket Girl Solutions, and my domain, my website is Rocket Girl Solutions. So my email address should also be Belinda@RocketGirlSolutions. However, many people make the mistake of having their email be rocketgirlsolutions@gmail.com. So that's one step away from being as professional as you can be. All you have to do is call your ISP, so GoDaddy or Bluehost or whoever your ISP is, and have them walk you through it. It's not difficult. You can also Google it, but it makes a huge difference. And the last one is it's a little bit of a pet peeve, which is it's important to put your phone number in your email signature. So many times I've had meetings with someone. I go to find their phone number because I'm supposed to call them, and I can't find it, and I'm searching through emails, and it's a little insane. So make sure you have your phone number there. The other thing is I have my logo, and I also have my tagline, Order and Intelligence for the Small Business Owner. So every time I send an email, there's a little advertisement right there. So I strongly encourage you to do that. The next thing is your business card. It's very important. This is something that you leave behind. You want it to be beautiful. You want it to be designed, and you really don't want to use those free Vistaprint cards. Those are for your kids. So this does require an investment. However, it's an investment that will last for years. When I had my graphics guy design my card, it was probably $250. However, I've had it for these 9 years, and I've moved 4 times. but each time it needed to be updated, it was a small amount of money to change my address. I get them printed at moo.com, and they have beautiful stock, and it really is something nice to leave behind. I didn't have a lot of money when I started, so I only ordered 50 cards. Gone are the days where you have to buy that sleeve of cards and it's $500. I got 50 cards. It was $19, and when I needed more, I had another $20. And then eventually, now I order them, a couple hundred at a time. But that is a good way to get them when you're first starting out. The other thing is, all of these cards, if you look at them, and then you looked at these are my three of my clients, if you looked at their websites, they look the same. If you looked at their LinkedIn profile, if you look at their email signature, their branding is consistent all the way through. So that's really important too. Someone asked a question, was that moo.com? Yes, it's moo.com. I get also my stationery printed there, and they're terrific. The other thing is twice a year they have a discount. I don't remember if it's 10 or 20%, but when that happens, I shoot an email to my clients and say it's time to reorder, and that's a good time to stock up. So make sure you have a nice business card. Okay, so now let's talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very important platform, and no matter what you're doing in business, you really should not ignore it. So this is my brother Tim, and so he has since been fixed, but I'm just going to point out the mistakes that he made in his LinkedIn profile. So you can't see it on the screen, unfortunately, because the background's gray, but his picture is very small, and there's a gray border around it, and that's because when I took this screenshot, LinkedIn had increased the size of the image that you could upload, but Tim didn't get the memo, and so he had his old picture. The other thing is, if you look closely, you can see the top of a blonde woman's head on the left-hand side, and there's a bald guy behind, and Tim's chin is cut off. This looks very unprofessional. So like I said, I fixed it. Now, my brothers are identical twins. So Tom got the memo, and you can see he's in this sort of power pose. It's a professional image. There's a nice background, and there's a huge difference in the professionalism of this. So here is mine, and I want to tell you a couple of things about it. So we've talked about the photo. I want to tell you specifically about this photo. There's a company called Portrait Simple, and they're in this area, and you can go, and they're in the mall. The last I looked, they're in the Trumbull Mall. They're also in the Boston area, which is where I got this picture taken. And if you go there, you make an appointment, and it's something like $75, and you can get 3 digital headshots. Really critical, especially with all the social media and all the things that we're doing with it, that you look like you look now. You want to make sure if someone looks you up on LinkedIn and then they have coffee with you, they're not looking for you that was 10 years ago. They're looking for actually what you look like now. A couple of other things I want to point out. With my brothers, their titles are their titles that their business, their companies gave them. So Vice President, North America, blah, blah, blah. For me, my title is Chief Rocket Launcher, which makes no sense, but it's kind of funny. So what I put in my title is a description of what I do. So when people see that, pull me up, they see Business Manager for Solo Professionals and Small Business Owners. They know exactly what I do. The other thing is you want to make sure that when someone clicks your contact info, that button that's on the right-hand side, you want to make sure that your contact information is there and then it's current. At the minimum, you want to have your website if you have one, you want to have your phone number, and you want to have your email address. Really important. If you can, get your contacts up to 500. There's sort of I can't think of the word, but people regard you differently if you have 500 connections, so that's something to work on. I made it a little project and got there as fast as I could. The last thing I want to point out is if you look right under my picture, you see a URL, and it's linkedin.com/in, and then my name, Belinda Wasser. It's possible to change and customize your URL, and that makes it nice, especially if you don't have a website. That way you can share this, and it's not a bunch of jumbled up numbers and letters. It actually means something, and people can remember it. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. All right, now I want to talk about someone said LinkedIn is 500 is the threshold. So what happens is over 500, you never see more than 500. It's just 500 plus. So you could have 501 or 10,000. So that's how that works. Okay, so a website. Professional website is important. It's better to have a beautiful website than have a horrible one. And if you can't afford a nice one, rely on LinkedIn and social media until you can. Now I'm going to break this website down into some different slides, and I'm going to point out some of the critical pieces. Okay, so this is for Martha Miser. This is her header. Her company's name is Aduro. Beautiful logo. When we first started working on this project, her logo was dated, and my graphics person brought it more up to date. However, we did this about 6 or 7 years ago, and you can still see how it's still lovely. She makes it clear immediately what she does: leadership and change for purpose-driven companies. All right. These are all the words on her homepage. It's really clear what she does. If you read it, it's basically, here's the statement, this has led to problems, that's where we come in, and here's the result. So I know that a lot of people put tons and tons of words on their website. I really recommend against it. It is significantly more difficult to write fewer words because they matter more, but it's a good investment. So something funny about this, if you look at her image, that image was actually taken at Portrait Sipple, the place I told you about before. She brought a marker with her, and we were just going through old pictures of her, and we found this one and realized we could overlay this image on an image that she had of a flip chart. So even though this looks like it's a in-the-moment photo, it's really a candid photo, it's really not. The other thing is a testimonial. So this testimonial is right on Martha's homepage, which is great. You can see also there's a link for more testimonials. So you want to put the right things on the homepage so people really can get a sense of who you are. The next slide is her footer. And you can see how to contact her. All of her information is right there. She has a newsletter. That's how she stays in touch with people, so easy to subscribe. And then to learn more about what she does. So I'm going to show you the whole thing again. So you can see how all these pieces come together beautifully. All right, now let's go over here. All right. So make sure that you look through all of the different ways that you touch people. Make sure that they're branded in a similar way and that they're done professionally, so that people will take you seriously. So that's the first mistake. So are there any specific questions about that? You can just type them in the chat message. And please don't be shy. There's no silly question. Everything goes today. Okay, terrific. So we'll move on. All right. So fairly often, people will come to me and they'll say, I need to get more clients. I need to find more people to work with. Oh, someone asked how to get a domain name. I will answer that. You go to somewhere like Register for Less or GoDaddy, and right on their homepage, what you can do is you can type in the domain that you want, and if it's available, you can purchase it right there. The prices vary. Usually you get a good deal the first year, and then the price goes up a little bit. I registered a domain the other day at GoDaddy. The first year was literally 99 cents. All right, I have another question. Do you find that you get a greater percentage of business from social media or word-of-mouth referrals? Absolutely word-of-mouth referrals, and we're going to talk about that in depth in a little bit. I think that's mistake number 3. And the business that I get from my referrals is significantly, the clientele is much better. We're much more suited than when people come out of the blue. It's remarkable, and I'll talk more about that. Okay, so now we're going to jump back to number 2 and start that. So people come to me and they say, I need more clients. I wonder the best networking places to go to. Can you refer people to me? Some people even think about telemarketing, and they want to use social media to get new clients. But my first question back to them every time is, how do you stay in touch with the people that you already know? And here's an interesting story about how this works. So I had a friend. She lived across the hall when I lived in Boston. I lived in a building, and she had a very small niche. What she did was she worked with physicians, and she taught them how to be better observers of their patients by teaching them how to look at art. All right, so you can't get any more niche than that. So we produced a newsletter. I helped her with the constant contact and getting her a list in and all of that stuff. And she started writing. And then one day I ran into her in the hall, and it occurred to me that I hadn't gotten her newsletter lately. And I said, Alexa, have you been publishing? And she said, oh, she was a little embarrassed. She said, I took you off my list because I didn't think that you could really help me find clients. But what she didn't know was that my daughter went to a private school up the street, and also the daughter of it was the CEO of a big hospital in Boston. Also, his daughter went there as well. And I used to stand next to him on the soccer field and make small talk. And if I got her newsletter, would I have mentioned it to him? Probably not. However, if the conversation went in that way, or if she had written about something that I thought he might find interesting, I absolutely would have told him. So you really can't predict where your business is going to come from. So what I suggest is keeping in touch with everyone you know in a systematic way, which I'm going to describe in a few minutes, and establish yourself as a likable expert so they know what you do and they know how to get in touch with you. So the first thing that I want to talk about is my newsletter. So I'm going to break this down as well. I consider my newsletter my number one secret weapon, absolutely. It's how I started my business, and now all through these 9 years, I continue to publish. I publish generally twice a month. Sometimes time goes by, but that's really what I shoot for. For most people, once a month is sufficient. So the reason this is so great is when I started out, what I did was I went through all of my contacts, and I found probably about 400 contacts, and I added them to Constant Contact. I was using Constant Contact at the time. Now I worked with MailChimp. So I added them all. My first newsletter I sent out, I put a PS at the bottom under my signature, and I said, we've had a relationship in the past, so I've added you to my list. You can unsubscribe at any time if you don't want to receive this anymore. So that's how I got started. From there, I only added people that I specifically asked the question, can I ask you, can I subscribe you to my newsletter? And from there and over time, I have been able to grow it to almost 1,600 people. So even though creating my newsletter is an effort, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, when I hit the send button, which I'm going to do again on Thursday, I'm going to be in the inbox of 1,600 people. So that to me is a really great way to stay in touch. So here's the first part. So in the welcome, I make sure that I put some kind of personal message. So I might be relating here, as I am here in this example, to what the newsletter is about, but I also talk about that I went to a horse show. I have my handwritten signature, which is a JPEG, and that makes it more personal. I've got my picture, again, same picture too. I do use the same picture across all social media. My personal Facebook picture is different, but all of my professional headshots are exactly the same. Whoops, hold on. The next part is the body, the article. And I have a pretty high open rate. It's around 40%, and I think that part of why that is that I actually write my newsletter. I make it personal, I make it real, and I don't talk about necessarily, I talk about problems that clients are having, and then I give the answer. I'm not concerned that people are not going to hire me because I told them how to clean their email inbox out. I think it's really more establishing the breadth and the width of all of the different things that I know how to do. The other thing is I try to choose a photograph that's beautiful. This particular photograph and all the photographs that I use are from a site called 123RF, and this image is only $2. For something like this, you only need to buy the small image. You're offered more expensive options, but the small one works. And the reason you want to buy the image is because most images are copyrighted. There are some places you can get copyright-free images, but I prefer to buy them and be sure. And if you don't use a copyright, if you use a copyright-protected image in the wrong way, you can get into trouble. And I've had a couple of clients had to write checks in the hundreds and one even $1,000 to get out of trouble doing that. So it's just not worth it. The other reason that I want to have a beautiful image is when I share this on social media, this is the image that's going to be showing up. So it is important. Then there's a third section of my newsletter down at the bottom, and this is called Things I Can't Live Without. And it's always just short like this. It's a way for me to, again, share something personal about myself, have people get to know me. And I write about things like on Thursday I'm going to write about our backyard chickens. Here I'm writing about Waze. I'll write about an app. I'll write about a place that I've been or a service that a person offers. So it's also a place where I can be generous if there's something I want to promote for someone else. So that's always great. Then the last part is the About Us. The About Us is critical for a number of reasons. One of the best ways to get new business is to make sure that you know how to talk about what you do in a very clear, memorable way so other people can refer you. So this is what I say at the bottom of my newsletter. If you click on that link for here, there's this whole web page that in great detail lists all the services that I offer. And then the other thing is there's a free 30-minute consult that people can click right there, and they often do. One of the things that's interesting about the newsletter approach is that I will get an email from someone, or they'll get onto my calendar, and I'm sorry, I was looking at the chat. And what they'll say to me is, I've been thinking about hiring you for a year, and I don't even know who they are. And that's what's so interesting is that this keeps in touch with them in a personal way, that they feel like they know me, and it opens up opportunities. Someone asked, how often do I write my newsletter? When my life is going very well, every other week, every other Thursday. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so the newsletter. The second most important way to stay in touch with people and to get business is something I call the Keep in Touch email. Very simple. Again, I've got my email signature at the bottom, my tagline, and if you'll notice, this really isn't about work at all. So I hope you had a nice weekend. I thought about you on Saturday. I'd love an update when you get a chance. And then if they live locally and I like them, I'll say let's schedule lunch soon. The key to this is that I only keep in touch with people I like. So I'm not prospecting, I'm not looking for real estate agents, or I'm not looking for people who do specific things. I really believe that if I sprinkle myself around with people that I like in a way that it's easy for them to understand what I do, that I'll be referred. And it's true, I take on an average of 2 or 3 new clients every month just by doing this. Oh, one thing to think about here is if she doesn't reply and give me an update, I do not take that personally. I just don't even think about it. I figure something happened. I went below the fold of her email, and at least I got to say hi to her. And if she didn't get to say hi to me, that's totally fine. I only do 2 a day because I want to make sure that if they respond, that I don't lose their emails. Because that's sort of the point of this, is to be in touch with people. So you don't want to drop the ball even though they might. Something else, another thing is using LinkedIn. So mostly people use LinkedIn to invite people to something, or to share an insight, or to talk about their work. This is something that one of my colleagues came up with. He calls it linking out instead of linking in, which is kind of funny. And so here's my client Bob, and he's publishing about he's publishing his article. And so I just wrote the comment on the bottom, "Thanks for another great article, Bob." And the reason this is significant to me is that one year, a long time ago, I was doing this, and there was someone who was it was a friend of my ex-husband who I met at a wedding once. But I remembered who he was, and we were connected on LinkedIn, and he was announcing on LinkedIn that he was starting a new business. And I guess he'd been following me. So I wrote, "Way to go, Mark, congratulations." That was it. From there, he hired me, The phone rang in about 10 minutes, and I'm not exaggerating. And he paid me $15,000 that year. So that's a testament right there on linking out. The other thing is keeping in touch with my current clients. So how I do that is I have something. So let me give you a little background. When people buy my time, when they work with me, they buy it in 5 or 10 hour chunks. And so every Monday, I send my clients an email to let them know it's called a debit card. It's virtual. To let them know how much time is on the debit card, when it expires, the time is good for a year, and then they can add more time to their debit card, or they can schedule time with me. So this is a way that I stay in touch with all 50 of those clients, because sometimes they're working with me on a project that's fast and furious right now, but it might be that I haven't heard from them for a couple of months. So that's the way that I keep in touch with them. The other thing that's great about this is that they jump on my schedule, and they'll renew their debit card. Just yesterday, 3 people did that just from this automated email. I also keep in touch with handwritten notes. Here's a note that I sent to a client. I have fun with my brand, so I was sending her these silly rocket erasers. And this is the picture that she put on social media. And then another way, the last way we're going to talk about today is there's a service called Send Out Cards. And I don't use it right now, but it is really great. My guy Mark, he designed this custom card cover. I send out a tip. There's a picture of me doing something silly in the middle, in the inside of the card. And it causes a lot of conversation, and it's a nice way to keep in touch with people. So all of these different ways just help you sprinkle yourself around. So someone's saying that they love send out cards. Okay, so that's mistake number 2. So I'd like to take questions on mistake number 2. So
Belinda, there's a question, Belinda, on how do people schedule you, something like Calendly, or do you interact directly? So maybe you just talk a little bit about scheduling if they push that button.
Sure, absolutely. So I use Acuity. I have used most of the others, Schedule Once, definitely Calendly. There's another one that's really popular. I can't think of it right now. And Acuity is my favorite. I like it because I can embed it on my website. I can control the color of the buttons. I just have more control, and I can also control in a much more thorough way the emails that go out to my clients. So what happens is at the bottom of my email signature, they can click on that and be taken to my sign-up page. They can, on the bottom of every page on my website, there's a link. There's also a box on my button to click on my website that says ways to start working with Belinda. There's a link there too. So I put it everywhere that I can. And all they do is it syncs with my Google Calendar automatically. And there are times that I've decided that I'm available, and people just jump on my calendar. It happened today. I have a 30-minute consultation with someone that I've been keeping in touch with that I haven't thought about for a long time, and I'm talking to her tomorrow.
And there's one more related question on a send out. What is a send out? Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. And before you do that,
sure.
there was a comment about sending out your slides, and the slides and the recording of the presentation will be available on our website in a couple of days. So you can access that at fairfieldcounty.score.org.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so on that note, there'll be an opportunity to sign up for my newsletter later, and if you decide to do that, I'll also send you the 7 biggest mistakes in a 2-page summary. So that's available too. Okay, so all right, so Send Out Cards. Let's see. Send Out Cards is a service that literally sends out cards in snail mail, which is a channel that hardly anyone is using, and you can customize them. So I uploaded a list of 60 people that I wanted to send a card to. I customize it. I'm really sort of oversimplifying, but I click a button, put money in, and they take care of it. And in a couple of days, these letters, these cards go out. You can send postcards. You can send all different. You can put a gift with it. You can put a Starbucks gift card, things like that. So it's nice.
Okay, I think we can move on.
All right, awesome. Okay, so you're getting ready to launch your website, you want to have a webinar, you think a newsletter would be a really great idea, and you go to look for your contacts, and they're everywhere. So when you're first starting out, in fact, when people are first starting businesses and they're doing all these different kinds of things, like working on their website and working on, the copy, I suggest that when they're, in the early evening, maybe when they're not at their best, but they still want to work on their business, they start collecting the names, because that's their contacts, and putting them all together, because that's the thing that can stop you in your tracks. Is your website might be great and everything might be ready to go, but if you can't tell people about it, you're stuck. So what I recommend is that you put them in Excel in a very specific format. So first of all, look at all of your different platforms. So some of them you can export, like LinkedIn, you can export the names. Unfortunately, you can no longer export the email addresses. But look in your Gmail, Facebook, however you're interacting with people. And it's going to probably be kind of a manual job. But if you do a good job and you keep it up, which is much easier than doing this to begin with, you'll never have to do it again. Last time I did it was 9 years ago. So the thing to understand about this is you want to put the information in Excel in columns. So first name, last name, email address. If you're doing a newsletter, all you really need is the email address. It's nice to have the first name and last name, especially if somebody's email is, I don't know, my daughter when she was in third grade, chubbybunnies@gmail.com. I would have no idea who was answering, who was reading my email. So if you can have that, if you want to do something like send out cards, then you'll want to have the street address, city, state, zip, all separate. And the reason you want to have that is because there are lots of applications that you can use and leverage once you have this information. So Constant Contact, MailChimp, Aweber, Infusionsoft, Contactually is the CRM that I use to keep in touch with people. ProsperWorks is another one. Capsule, I'm sure you all recognize a lot of these names. Evite, so even Evite and Eventbrite. So if you get all your contacts in one place, you have a lot of leverage and a lot of places to move. So does anyone have any questions about how to get your contacts in one place? Okay, great. All right, we're going to move on. Before we do move on, there's something that I didn't say, and I want to make sure that I do, because it's important when you're starting out. When I write my newsletter, I don't just sit down and write it and plop it into MailChimp and send it out. So my newsletter that's coming out on Thursday, I think about it for a while. In fact, as soon as I send the send button on the last one, I start thinking, okay, now what am I going to write about? I wrote it on Sunday. I sent it to a content editor on Monday to make sure that I wasn't using jargon and that it was clear and that it was in my voice, because I can be a stiff writer sometimes. Then I sent it to the editor, and she makes sure it's grammatically correct. And then I put it into MailChimp, and then it gets sent out. So I just want everybody to know that I'm not this special person who can just whip these things out, and all of this stuff takes work. And the other thing is that all the things that I'm telling you, I learned this over time. So when I first started with my newsletter, I put it just on LinkedIn because that's all. I put it on my website because that's all you could really do. And then LinkedIn made it available for me to add it as an article, so I did that. And now I put it in Twitter. But I didn't just sit down and become the social media crazy person all in one day. It's incremental. So be gentle with yourself and understand that all these things that I'm talking about, like it's no big deal, is a 9-year journey that I've been on. So I want to make sure I say that because I don't want everybody to get overwhelmed by all this stuff. So there's a question I'm going to answer about mistake number 3. Where do you add a new contact, Excel or Outlook? So when a new contact comes, if I have asked them if they want to get my newsletter, I put them into MailChimp. And then from there, they're self-selecting. They're getting the newsletter, and they either take themselves off the list or they stay. The other place that I add them is Contactually, which is my CRM. So I add them there, and Contactually syncs with Gmail. So if someone sends so if they're in Contactually, they're in Gmail, and if they're in Gmail, they're in Contactually. So those are the 2 places that I add them. All right. Okay, so ignoring your numbers is something that is, in a lot of ways, it's the biggest mistake, and because the lesson, I think, is the hardest. Using rocketgirlsolutions@gmail.com doesn't look professional, but it's not going to take me out of business. Ignoring your numbers can take you out of business, and I learned this the hard way, like everybody learns all this stuff. So what you want to do, to my point, no one really wants to look at this because it's overwhelming, it's boring, it's also scary, so I'm just going to take that off the screen. But the thing about it is that you need to know what you're spending your money on. And I think in these days, so in the olden days, the bank would send us a statement, and we would look at it, and we would be able to see where all of our money was going, and we would reconcile it. Now I think with online banking, money's coming out, it's going in, and we're not really paying attention to it. So I recommend, at a minimum, looking at your bank statement, either printing it or on the screen, and running your finger literally down every expense and knowing what they are. The other thing is you want to make sure that you know where your money is coming in and have a separate banking account. So I have a personal bank account, and then I have my Rocket Girl bank account. All of my client money that comes to me goes into that account. All of my expenses go out of that account. Very important. If you need to use a credit card and you can't get a business credit card because that's hard to do, especially when you're starting out, take one of your personal credit cards and make that your business credit card. I even wrote my business name on the credit card so I wouldn't get confused. If you commingle your money or you only have a personal account, it's possible that the IRS will consider that your business is a hobby. So keep those separate. Talk to your accountant. They can explain more about that than I can. But know how much it costs to run your business, and make sure you're looking at your numbers on a regular basis. Any questions about that? It's a big, scary, horrible one. Okay. Someone asked me why I prefer contactually. So that's about mistake number 3. Contactually, it's funny. With tools, I think one of the critical things is to pick one, and unless it's really driving you, well, not even really driving you crazy, but unless it's not serving you, just stick with it. A lot of my clients, I spent some significant time on the phone yesterday with a client who's trying to choose a CRM, and she's afraid she's going to pick the wrong one. And I understand that because it's an investment, so know what the things are that you need. For me, I need to be able to find my contact information easily. It's really an address book for me. And then those Monday morning emails where I get in touch with my clients, they have templates for that, so that was important for me. I didn't really track leads and sales cycles and all that stuff. So while that was important to her, it's not important to me, and I think contactually might do that. But honestly, it's comfortable, it's familiar, and as a result of that, I've migrated many clients onto it because I can support it for them. So there are a lot of people like Copper. Some people, it just changed its name, I think. Omniport is a good one. There's Entreport. I'm sorry, Entreport. There's a lot of great ones out there, but just make sure you're not spending more than you think than you want, because there's some free ones. And really, when you're just starting out, you don't need to spend a lot of money. You just need to make sure you're keeping track of your stuff, right? So this is a big one, and I'm going to go kind of fast through this because I think you're going to get this pretty quickly. But when people first start out, they are working on the kitchen table. They've got their daughter's old laptop. They're struggling all over the place. So I just want to run through these tools that I think are really important. So the first thing is you need a dedicated workspace. It doesn't have to be big. My office is sort of a separated part of my bedroom. I use an IKEA dining room table for my desk, and my office is like 3 inches wider on either side. I just look out a window. It's great, but I don't have a big office, so you don't need that. However, every time company comes over, I don't have to move, or every time we have dinner. So make sure you have a dedicated space. Get a good chair. This is a Herman Miller Aeron chair. It was a silly amount of money, but I've had it for 12 years. I have a back that is sensitive, and when I sit in it all day, I don't get a backache. So for me, it's worth it. You definitely want a good computer. They're not expensive. My boyfriend just got a new computer last week. I think he got a computer that I could easily run my business on. It was $599. Got it at Micro Center. Really great Dell computer. You need a phone that works, so make sure you keep that updated, the updated software. I use the Apple earbuds. You can use something else, but just make sure it works and is comfortable. When I moved to Connecticut, I live in the woods, and I had to get a cell booster. So if you need it, get it. I also had to upgrade our Ethernet connection, our bandwidth. I had to upgrade that. And I actually have a hard wire going from the router to my computer because it makes my connection more reliable. So all of those things matter. So take care of those. This is a picture of my desk. And you can see I get to look out that beautiful window. I have 3 monitors. It saves me a ton of time. It makes me much more efficient. So if you can imagine, let's say I'm doing an email newsletter. The Word document with the text is on the right-hand side. MailChimp is in the middle, and my email is on the right. So I add the words from Word into MailChimp, and I can compare them. I can make sure I haven't left anything out. I can send myself a test. I can see it on my email on the left, and then I can compare. If something doesn't look right, I can look at the Word document. So instead of clicking back and forth on tabs in a laptop all scrunched over, this is a great solution. And if you don't know how this works, if you take the mouse and the left-hand monitor, you just slide it across all 3 monitors as if it's one screen. So it's a terrific solution, and it's not expensive. Each monitor, I think they're 27-inch monitors. They're about $120 each. They're on a stand that's on that box, which is actually a computer on its side. And the stand was about $100 also. I started off with 2, and then I migrated to 3, and I really recommend it. I have a laptop that I travel with. I have it with me right now, but I prefer to work on a desktop. I think it's I just prefer that. So that's something that I have. And then the last thing that I really love is my high-speed hotspot. I can use my phone, but this is much faster and more reliable. It does use my data, and I can connect 15 devices to it. So when we're on a road trip and I'm sitting in the front seat checking emails, this thing is great. I've used it in Kentucky, back roads of Virginia, on my way to Newport, and it doesn't drop. It's terrific. So I really recommend that. And you get it from your cell phone carrier. Okay. So I'm going to buzz through some of the tools that I use. I use Toggle to track my time. It's a free app. It's great. Constant Contact is terrific for email newsletters. Dropbox is a way that I can get all of my files synced across all my devices. So if you don't know about that, definitely visit their website and check it out. Contactually, we've talked about. I really recommend that everyone, Mac or PC, has Microsoft Office. You'll find as you move through the world that most people have this, and using pages and numbers can cause a disconnect when you're trying to share information. And you can get it inexpensively. Password management, critical, so that you're not struggling looking for that piece of paper or where you wrote your password. G Suite. For email, I use the paid Google account. I love that, and I recommend it. It's I think $12 a month, and it's fully supported. You call Google, and they will help you with whatever problem you're having. Teamwork is my project management software. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Stripe is my preferred merchant account software. I have and again, I said I have an Apple, and I use Pandora. I listen to music all day long. So it's important that you get the tools that support you. Make sure that if you're not using a tool, that you stop paying for it. It's easy just to and that's all part of taking care of your finances. And if you need a tool, wait until you're ready to jump in. Don't get it thinking, oh, I'm going to do that next week. With the day you're ready to do it, you can sign up. You can get access to everything in moments. All right, so does anyone have any questions about tools? Specific questions about
Linda,
tools?
I think there's one on moving from Constant Contact to MailChimp.
Oh, sure. Okay, that's easy. So I used Constant Contact when they first started out a long time ago, I think 15 years. And I really liked them. I did not like MailChimp at the time because they did not have support unless they didn't have support. I think it was all free. Again, dark ages. When I started to get more involved with custom integrations, I found that MailChimp was a much more robust tool. And then a number of years ago, like 4 years ago I think, Constant Contact was purchased by a big international company, and they started to, what I think is, dumb down the application. So I can't, for example, I can't see the HTML code. I have less control over the newsletter. So in MailChimp, if the picture isn't centered, and for whatever reason it won't center using the controls, I can jump over to the HTML and drop in a command, and it will center it. It integrates really well with something called Gravity Forms, which is a very robust, powerful way to collect data on your website. It integrates. It just integrates in so many ways. If you go to MailChimp and you type in add-ons, your mind will be blown. So that's why. And the support is really good, but you do have to pay for it. It's significantly less than Constant Contact. So that's why I like MailChimp much better. All right, so I'm going to jump ahead. These two next mistakes are pretty quick, and then we'll go to questions. So the main point about this is just because you can do everything, you really shouldn't. I know how to build a website, but I don't. I have a guy that does that. I have a client, she said something I thought really drove this point home. She said, Belinda, I'm so glad you do my newsletters because if I did them, she's a financial planner, she said, it would take all day and there would be crying involved. On the other hand, she has me do them, and there are many professionals that can help you with all different kinds of stuff, and the result is that it's done in an hour and 15 minutes. It's up on our website. It's all on her social media, and she's happily helping all of her clients. So I think that's a great thing to look at, the things that you're tolerating, the things that you're struggling with. In order to delegate, though, there's a couple of things that you need to know. One is you have to have a tool or a system to track the work that you're giving to someone else. You really can't just say, hey, here, do my newsletter, unless you're hiring a newsletter expert. You really need to outline the project, and it needs to be in incremental steps. There needs to be deadlines set and clear communication about what the expectations are. The thing to remember is that this is a relationship. It's not just saying, figure it out or let me know if you have any problems. It's really communicating it. One of my clients asked me to set up an email system for his new company. And he was very smart because he said to me, let's talk for a few minutes. I want to hear your approach. So even though he doesn't understand what I'm going to do and he doesn't want to do it, he understands my approach. He knows the steps I'm going to take, and he feels comfortable with them. And that also helps me because it sets the expectation, again, for what the result's going to be. So make sure you delegate the things that you need help with and do it responsibly. Any questions about that? Okay, so we're going to jump. Oh, here we go. Is there a website that could help with starting a newsletter? I'm going to move on. Can you say more about that when you say starting a newsletter? Does that mean with the application or the concept? What is the part that you need help with? All right, so if you would do that, and then I'm just going to jump on to the last mistake in the few minutes that we have left. So you do not want to be this guy. You do not want to lose track of important details. And this happens really easily. What happens is you hire a web developer. He can't get you on the phone. He wants to be helpful. So what he does is he registers your domain, but he does it in his name. Whoops, now he owns it. So while you can transfer it, let's push the button of he wins the lottery, moves to France, and you can't find him anymore, and you want to move your website. You can't. You just can't. So you either have to get a different domain, or I don't know what you would do in that case. So you want to make sure that you keep track of important details. Another example is a client I had who her business manager was embezzling. And when we discovered this, we went to look at her QuickBooks, and we found out that my client was an administrator, but she had administrative rights to QuickBooks, but she wasn't the administrator. So there were things that she wasn't able to do on the account. She didn't own it. Her business manager owned it. So be thoughtful about things like that. Another example is Google Drive. If you start a document and you want to share it with people, but it's your document, don't let someone else on your team start that document, because if they leave the team, you could lose access to that. So just think about the important details and who needs to own what information. And I know for the most part everyone helps each other, and things like that can be fixed. But there can be sticky situations that you can't think of. Like if divorce exists for a reason, everybody doesn't always end up happy. So it can happen in your business too. So just keep that in mind. Very important. Okay. So I jumped ahead, sorry. Okay, so this is my last slide. So if you'd like to stay in touch and get, sounds like you're going to get a copy of this presentation anyway, but if you'd like to get a summary and also join my email list, you can text me here, you can check out my website, and you can email me any questions anytime at this email address here.
Okay, thanks, Belinda. We do have a few minutes left for any final questions. So if people have questions, if you could please type them in the lower left-hand corner of the chat screen, that would be great. And I know there was a question about starting a newsletter. I have not seen any further details on that question at this point. So.
Does Toggle integrate with billing systems? I don't know. Toggle has a reporting system. You can export Toggle in a CSV or an Excel spreadsheet, so you might be able to do the integration like that by exporting and then importing. The other thing I would do is I would look at Zapier. Zapier is a tool that connects all kinds of different applications together in surprising ways, and you might be able to make a connection between Toggle and the billing system that way.
There's a question here, Belinda, about can you say more about use of project management software and what kind you use?
Absolutely. So when I first started out, I literally used notebooks. I had 6 clients. That worked. From there, I moved to Asana. I then checked out Basecamp. Finally, I landed on something called Teamwork. And again, this is over a 9-year period. Teamwork is very robust. It's difficult to understand initially. So if you decide to check that out, do some webinars, or I have had clients hire me just to help get them set up in there, so it's done in a way that works. But that's my favorite one, and in fact, really quickly, I'll show you. Whoops, hold on, let me just do this. I was going to talk about it, but we were running out of time. So this is a great thing that it does. This is a template that I use over and over every time someone buys some of my time. And it outlines all the steps and who does it and when it's due. And the great thing about it is every time a new client comes, I just open this template and use it again. I have these for millions of things, like setting up webinars, updating someone's website, doing their newsletters. So that was the thing that caused me to stick with Teamwork. I've been using it probably 5 years over Basecamp.
Okay, that's great. We only have time for one more question. There's one, what is the best way to access your hard drive remotely?
So how I do that is I use Dropbox. So instead of using my documents or whatever you have on your computer, every single file that I have on my hard drive is in Dropbox. That way I can access it from my phone. I don't really need to do remote in like we used to. I just have access to it on my laptop, or I can log into listen to me, I'm an old lady, log into Dropbox in the cloud, and I can see all my files from any computer. So that's how I do that.
That's great. Okay, unfortunately we're out of time. That's all the time we have for questions. Again, one more reminder that the webinar is recorded. The materials will be available in a couple of days on our website. Our next webinar will be 2 weeks from today. The topic is using social media to grow your business, best practices and newest tools, with Kate Berg presenting. Again, you'll see on the screen now the links that if you do want individual counseling, you can go to our website, or you can use the links on the screen. Similarly, you can access any of our SCORE workshops or webinars from our website or using the links that you see on the screen. At the end, as you sign off, you will receive an evaluation for this webinar. We really appreciate if you could fill those in. They help us immensely as we go forward with future topics and webinars. So on behalf of all of you, I'd like to thank you for attending today's live webinar, and in particular thanking Belinda for her great presentation today. So have a nice day, everyone. Take care.